And welcome to another episode of In The Stu here at Illinois Media School. I'm Eric Avila with my co-host Jose Contreras here. And today we got a special guest with us, Mark Giangreco.
Yes, we do.
He looks familiar to you guys, yes, because we all know where he's from, ABC7, and the luxurious career that he has. We're going to get to know him today. On this episode, Mark, how are you today?
Guys, honor to be here, man. It's like I'm going back to school. I learned something from you guys. Jose and Eric, it's a pleasure.
Nah, thank you for hopping on, man. So, look, we could go on and on about your accolades and everything like that. We know where you're coming from, but where did it all start for you, Mark?
I got to tell you, man, when I was 8, 9 years old, I was growing up in Buffalo, New York, and I was obsessed with radio. And I just wanted to be a top 40 rock jock. And I'd sit in my bed with a little transistor radio. I don't think any of you guys even know what that is.
No.
And
enlighten us.
Yeah, no, just a little radio. And at night back then, stations during the day would broadcast in a circular broadcast motion. At night, they'd go directional because a lot of the stations would share the same frequency.
Okay.
So I could pick up every radio station across the country, including WLS, Super CFL in Chicago, CKLW in Detroit, CHUM Toronto, 66 NBC in New York, WLW in Cincinnati. And I just wanted to be like Larry Lujak or Dr. Brock or Herb Kent or anybody.
Herb Kent, so I heard.
I was, well, those guys were all famous back in the 60s and 70s. And that's what I wanted to do. And, of course, I played sports, and I love sports like most people. So I just kind of blended the two. Took some communication writing courses in high school, went to the University of Dayton, where I majored in communications, radio, and TV. And I actually got my first full-time radio gig sophomore year in college.
Really?
So that's why I never went to class. I was always working, so it took me about 5 years to graduate. But I got a lot of great practical experience. The radio led to weekend anchoring sports at the local NBC station in Dayton.
Okay.
Then I got my first full-time TV job in Louisville, Kentucky.
Nice.
I was there for 4 years. Then finally got my dream job. I always wanted to work in Chicago. I love Chicago. I love the city. And NBC came calling, and I went. I was there for 12 years, had a blast with Ron Majors and Carol Marine and Jerry Taft and everybody. Then jumped over to ABC7 in 1994. And I got here in 82. 12 years at NBC, then another 28 years at ABC7. So I figured after 50 years, that's enough. But I really enjoyed it. I just loved it. I was obsessed with sports, and I was obsessed with writing, packaging, producing my own shows, graphics, all that stuff, cutting the sound bites. I mean, I was really into it.
Nice.
No, the journey sounds absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
What were your biggest challenges coming up in the industry?
Well, I think it's just getting over nerves. I was so anxious and nervous. And, you know, it's kind of like a stand-up comic. You get up there, and if the first joke goes okay, then you can relax and you roll. And that's what it was for me each step of the way. I walk into this radio station. I had no idea what I was doing. So the news director said, let's do an audition tape. And he put me in the studio. I didn't know how to start the tape recorder.
Really?
Yeah, I was just freaking out. So then when I got a chance to audition for television, I sit in the studio and the floor director says, do you need a teleprompter? And I go, no, because I didn't know what it was. So I'm reading my script like this rather than being able to read it off a prompter. But I was a quick learner. I had some great people around me. And then, like I say, the big break was Chicago. Now, all those other markets were great. It's a great learning experience, but you don't know how competitive it is until you get here. I mean, it was cutthroat, and it's like, okay, let's see what this new kid's got. And so, you know, you just have to shake it off and get rolling. I do have to tell you, there's one story. Okay, it's 1978, maybe 1977. I go to Louisville, Kentucky. Okay, that's the South. And I had never been able to use my real name. People thought Giangreco was too long, too ethnic. So I used just Mark Greco, which was kind of lame. But back then, you know, there weren't a lot of ethnic people on the air. Everybody had a fake name.
Right.
You know? So my first night on the air in Louisville, kind of nervous. I get through the show. Everything goes great. And our desk was our set. Our phone was there, computer, typewriter, everything. You just worked from your set because we had a newsroom behind us. So the phone rings, and I pick it up, and it's a viewer. And he goes, hey, you that new sports guy? I go, yeah. He goes, what are you, some kind of friggin' Puerto Rican or what? Whoa.
Wow.
I'm in the wrong town.
Right.
But you got to understand it was the South in the late 70s. But people got to know me. Everything went fine. It went great. And then I came to Chicago and was actually able to use my real name. And of course, this is the most ethnic city around.
It is.
Absolutely.
So it fit right in with all the Polish and Irish and Italian and African American, Hispanic, everything, which is exactly what I grew up with in Buffalo.
So, Mark, you said Louisville, Kentucky was your first break. Then you came here to Chicago. What did you enjoy the most and was more challenging from both sides?
Louisville, I was like, I didn't want to go there. I had an opportunity to go to Providence, Rhode Island instead, or Baltimore. And I'm a Northeast guy or a Midwest guy. I didn't want to go south. But I took the job reluctantly because they kept offering me more and more money. And I didn't really fit in Louisville like I alluded to. But it was a great, great learning experience. I learned everything about TV there. It was a Gannett station. And if you know anything about that chain, they are sticklers for perfect video. If you shot anything out of focus or blue, it never made air.
Really?
Every set was exactly the same, red, white, and blue. They had stations in Phoenix, Denver, Atlanta, and you always aspired to move up in the chain. And they did the slickest sportscast, newscast, weathercast ever. It was really highly produced. But we were in third place because we were a UHF station and all the other stations were VHF. And they were experimenting. So we were channel 32 going up against channel 3 and channel 11. And they were big NBC and CBS powerhouses.
Yeah, right.
So nobody really watched ABC down there. So the joke was, you remember Patty Hearst was kidnapped and they couldn't find her forever. The joke was they couldn't find Patty Hearst because she was doing the weather in channel 32.
Wow.
That's how low our ratings were. But I really learned my craft there. And when I came to Chicago, I was prepared.
Right.
And people were actually kind of surprised, like, wow, this guy can edit, shoot, make graphics. He's a good writer. He can package a show, jam in 10 pieces of video in 3 minutes. I learned all that in Louisville, even though, I wasn't crazy about the town. But I did get to cover the 1980 Louisville Cardinals National Championship with Darryl Griffith. 4 Kentucky Derbies. I co-hosted with Muhammad Ali, who, of course, is a Louisville native. Got to meet a lot of other interesting people, so I got a lot out of it.
No, it seems like there's a lot of great habits instilled in you before you came here to Chicago. But who was a mentor of yours that helped you really solidify your presence in this business?
Well, I'll say it's someone you don't know. Roy Dittman, who was my very first news director at WING Radio in Dayton. He and Jim Briggs, who was the morning anchor, and he flew a plane and did traffic. They taught me how to write a story in one sentence. Tell an entire story in one sentence, then rewrite it like 6 times all day to make it fresh. So that's where I learned how to edit myself and really just, be able to broadcast in headline terms.
Yeah.
Get the facts up and not get, people think you have to get real flowery and expand your writing. Write the way you speak, just as long as you speak correctly, obviously. So I learned everything from then, and then Bob Costas and I became friends. Mike Giangreco and I, they were very supportive. I mean, we're all about the same age, but still, they're network guys.
Right.
Brent Musburger, I met on several occasions, who was in Chicago for a while here at Channel 2. Who else? I mean, so many guys that were a little ahead of me in the business or moving to bigger markets. They were nice enough to stay in touch, and I would encourage that with everybody. You guys are going to go off and get your jobs and just always remember where you came from.
Absolutely.
And be ready to mentor the people coming up behind you,
Absolutely.
The whole pay it forward thing. It sounds corny, but it's true. So, Ron Majors and I are still best friends to this day, probably the greatest news anchor in the country. And Carol Marine as well. And Carol is the head of investigative journalism at DePaul right now. So I was lucky enough to be surrounded by everybody. But I'll tell you, forget New York, forget LA. Chicago is the absolute best media market in the country. You guys are lucky to be here because not only are we obsessed with sports, we're obsessed with news.
Yes.
People in this town still watch newscasts, and local television news is dying. It can't be avoided. Social media, internet have, crippled the ratings. When I came to Chicago, there were 3 TV stations doing news, and the total audience was about 2.5 million people. There are now 7 stations in Chicago doing news. The total audience is about 400,000.
Wow.
It's crashed because people are getting their news instantly off their phone. And the people who still watch local television news are elderly. and probably lower income, and advertisers are not attracted to that demographic. They want 25 to 49, people making money, people who are a little younger and, more culturally in tune and all that stuff. So it's been a battle. Once again, luckiest guy in the world, got to work during the heyday of local television when we were king. We were the primary source of entertainment and information. So Chicago's very provincial. We love our sports teams, and we love or hate our mayors and our aldermen, and everybody's in tune to what's going on in their neighborhood.
Ain't it the truth? Yep.
I raised my kids here. I've been here 40 years.
Wow, that's amazing. And I know you alluded that you always love the news and you love us watching sports. But like every college student goes through, was there always a plan B for you, Mark? Like, that's one thing that we want to know.
Wow, that's a great question. You know what? The answer is no.
Really?
Nothing. I didn't want to go into my dad's business. I really didn't have any other skills. I don't think I went to an all-boys Jesuit prep high school. Suit and tie every day, got beat up by the priests, had to play a sport, and it was rigid, 3 or 4 hours of homework a night, which again prepared me for college.
Yep.
College, you're like, wow, this is easy, because it was like being in military school in high school. So I was well prepared. I always thought I was a really good writer. So I probably could have fallen back on that, I guess, but again, that's still media.
Yeah.
So my other favorite job was I drove garbage trucks in my uncle's trucking company. Steam cleaned them, changed the oil, changed flats, worked on the engines, and I loved that job. That was my summer job. So maybe I would have been a truck driver. I don't know. I'm really into cars. I collect classic muscle cars, and I'm really a gearhead. So I probably would have gone that way, I guess.
Nice.
But I really had no career backup plan at all. I either was going to make it doing this or could have been dicey.
Mark, what's something that you want to give the students that go here to IMS? What advice would you give them trying to come up in this industry?
Okay, I'm going to be very blunt about this. Look, there are still plenty of opportunities in local television, news, and radio. But as I alluded to earlier, it's kind of a dying media platform. So if you're into radio or television or any other media platform, you want to get involved in, let's say, sports.
Yeah.
Okay. I would suggest seriously that you first pursue working for a league, a team, a D1 university, and work for their media departments.
Okay.
And you'll have the opportunity to do very well-produced features on players and the organization and so forth. The only drawback there is you might not be able to be really objective. Obviously you're pumping out propaganda for your particular team or your league, or your school. If there's a controversy or a scandal, you might not be able to touch that. So if you want to be a true journalist and move more toward the news side, then I would pursue legit radio and TV stations, but also websites and be a blogger and, all the streaming services. That's the way it's going to go. There are always going to be people in front of a microphone and in front of a camera, but not necessarily on local broadcast TV anymore. There are actually some small television stations in small markets that are selling their broadband and just going out of business and selling their broadband to streaming services, for 10, 20 million and just shutting down. Because my biggest advice would be pursue the private sector and pursue streaming opportunities, websites, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, everything. You can build a platform there, and you can build a brand there. That's the future. Right now, local television is still hanging in there, but it's not the future.
Understandable. Yeah, that's great advice right there. Now, Jose, we can't have Mark Giangreco in here and not talk about sports.
Absolutely not.
Right? So
it'd be a travesty.
Exactly. So, Mark, 2-part question. Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus. Do you like the moves that they have made so far? And the Buffalo Bills, I know that's your team.
That's my team.
That's your teams right there. Their division got just a tad bit tougher, and especially the conference today after the news about Tyreek Hill. How confident do you feel about your Bills in the AFC this year?
Well, we have Josh Allen. In Josh Allen, we believe. And I love Brandon being the general manager and Sean McDermott as the head coach. They're reloading. They're re-signing and signing a bunch of free. I'm surprised they're not $500 million over the cap. The way they've been signing,
you're right.
They brought back Shaq Lawson. They picked up Jamison Crowder, under the radar Jets receiver, who is going to replace Beasley. And I had a bone to pick with Beasley because he wouldn't take a pay cut. He was a really selfish player. He was an anti-vaxxer who divided the locker room.
He just came a whole toxic vibe.
He did. And he's very militant. And I was sick of Allen throwing little 4 and 5 yard ins and outs with no yards after catch.
Right.
Yeah, we know all about that
this
here in
is
Chicago.
a wide open. Yes, we do.
Yeah, we do.
It's a wide open offense. So I love what they're doing. Yes, the division is tougher. I can't believe the Chiefs traded Tyreek Hill. I can't believe it. I get it. You got a boatload of draft picks.
Right.
You have to keep getting younger. He's 28. He's the fastest human in the NFL. He's the most exciting player in the NFL. Why would you not pay him number 1 wide receiver money? I mean, they made him a nice offer. Just make him the highest paid and keep him. He's like a 6-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro. The cheetah is spectacular. He can't be covered. And the Bills lined up 15 yards back and let him catch everything the last 13 seconds, which makes me sick. But let's not get there. But him going to Miami, you see their offense now. Wow, this is great. They still have Tua, and he is totally unproven. And he's the trigger man, so Dolphin fans, don't get too excited. If you can't get the ball to Tyreek Hill, he's not going to be able to do anything. So I love the Bills. I am worried that, windows in the NFL now are so small.
Super tight.
They got to win it this year or next. I mean, I'm still living with 4 straight Super Bowl losses.
But in the early 90s.
And I'm living with, what happened last year.
Yeah.
It was just the Chiefs-Bills game was the greatest game.
That should have been the title game.
Oh, it should have been the title.
It should have been the title game.
As far as the Bears go, Matt Eberflus came in and he tried to be real yucky and jokey with the media, and he tried to be real loose. I thought that kind of fell flat in his first news conference. I saw so much Nagy in there, I kind of cringed a little bit. But he has a good reputation. Ryan Poles, young dude who's been with the Chiefs for 15 years. You can't have better experience than that.
No.
You just absorb that by osmosis. I like what he's done so far. I took a lot of heat on Twitter for criticizing him for not holding a news conference on camera in front of the media to explain the whole Larry Ogunjobi thing, where he flunked the physical.
Right.
So he did send out a detailed statement and put it all over social media and everything. Fans don't read statements. And people are going, Mark, of course you'd say that as a former reporter. Screw the media. They don't need to know. He's busy trying to make deals, not appease you guys. Well, Ryan Pace spoke once a year before training camp. You never saw him again. He hid in his cave.
Yep.
He never came out. So I was just hoping, just to refresh the whole thing and reset, Ryan would appease the media and come out and say, hey, look, this is what happened with Larry Ogunjobi. This is how it works. We can't send our own doctors to interview every free agent.
Right.
True.
And we vetted him, and this is the process, and a physical is part of it. So we caught it. Then we scrambled and got Justin Jones from the Chargers, a lesser D lineman, cheaper, but that was a good fallback move. So far, I like it. You going to ask me about Justin Fields?
Look, that was going to be the next question to follow up, because I was going to tell you, the one thing I do love about Ryan Post so far was that he had a backup plan already.
Yes.
Which alluded. And then obviously the Justin Fields is a bigger topic here in Chicago because, Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy drafted him, and now they're all gone. We're feeling this vibe again of the Mitchell Trubisky aspect once again, and having a new coach. Do you really have that confidence? Does this kid actually have it in him to perform?
Here's the thing. I'm glad they got him last year because look at all these veteran quarterbacks jumping around the league. The NFL is out of control.
It is.
Absolutely.
With Matt Ryan and being the latest, and it's just musical chairs with all these veteran quarterbacks who are not really great, just trying to get a fresh start. And it seems like the Colts, Chris Pollard, you got to give him credit. The whole when he lost his quarterback, when Luck just suddenly retired. Oh my God, what are we going to do? Mm-hmm. So he's had stopgaps.
Yep.
Carson Wentz, sorry, but this is stopgap mode. So the Bears already have Justin Fields. So I'm glad they got him. Having said that, maybe I am totally wrong with this. I don't like the body language. I don't like the the 5. First of all, technically, he's got this real slow looping delivery. He's got to tighten it up. And just like every rookie, can't read defenses. Yeah. But, I mean, that should come.
With time.
I feel like he checked out last year because he's a smart dude and just said, Matt Nagy, this coaching staff, no. I'm just going to chill and wait for the new guys to come in. And in the meantime, I'm going to listen to Nick Foles and the other quarterbacks in that room because I've tuned out Nagy. Remember, he basically said, I'm listening to the 2 other backups and getting,
more valuable information
because I don't trust Nagy, basically is what he said. He speaks his mind. I really like that. But and that signature play last year, broken play,
all the way
did
around.
The run all the way around. Wow, great. He can run his butt off. He's got a rocket arm. Everything's there. The one thing that bothered me, and this could be really nitpicking, on the sidelines whenever they'd show him, he's not in his iPad. He's not talking to another coach, not talking to another player. He's sitting by himself, just kind of staring off like I'm too cool for school. It just didn't feel right for me. I hope I'm totally wrong. I hope he has great success. I'm cheering for him. But then you can talk about this receiving core they're trying to throw together. I don't know about that. But the O-line is a priority, obviously. And hopefully he develops just like most talented rookies take the next step.
Yeah.
But that always bothered me.
Well, we have another season with a new staff, so hopefully it changes because I really do believe not only just Justin Fields, but majority of the Chicago Bears players kind of checked out, especially after the news around Thanksgiving about how he was going to be fired. So I personally believe that it'll be a new atmosphere for sure.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't blame you for being nitpicky. We have years of trauma when it comes to Bears quarterbacks. Let's be honest.
That's right. We're used to being negative.
Exactly.
For sure.
I built a whole career on being
right. Exactly. So let's move on to basketball. The Chicago Bulls have been struggling as of late. After a hot start with this new core, it seems like AK, he started off strong. He traded for Vucevic last year, and then he got a plethora of young players. DeMar DeRozan having an MVP-like season, but they've been hitting a low point so far. Right now,
here's the thing. All the injuries.
Yeah.
Their 2 best defensive players have been hurt for a long time. Luckily, Caruso's back. Ball looks like he's not coming back.
That looks,
Okay, so that's bad for the playoffs. They're a first-round playoff team. They have 3 All-Stars. Vucevic, DeRozan, and Levine. But they're second-tier All-Stars. As great as DeRozan has been this year, I mean, this has been a total surprise. He's just been filling it up, and he's a great guy. Levine, exciting dunker, really fun to watch, entertaining, plays 0 defense, and you have to play a little bit in this league, unless you're Kevin Durant or, James Harden or whatever. They're a good team. They're not a great team. But Arturis is a legit front office guy.
He is.
John Paxson, I love him as a person. I think he's a wonderful guy. He was the worst executive ever. And Gar Forman spoke in circles. He never gave you a straight answer. How could this guy be a GM? I don't know how he ever got a job. They were the worst. They spun their wheels for years.
Yeah.
You bring in this whole new regime, these guys get it, and they have an international perspective. So they're good, but they're not great. And I think you're just going to have to live with that. I think they're 0-16 against the top 3 teams in the East and West.
And 1-16 because they beat the Jazz in the beginning of the year.
Oh, okay. All right.
Give them 1 credit.
Yeah. I don't think the Jazz were in the top 3 early, but I'm not going to argue.
All right. Yeah, they're there.
I'm not a stats guy anyway. But they got blown out by the Bucks last night. Not even close. And so when they play a top-tier team, if you look at the scores, they have been getting blown out by the best. So, hey, look, it's better than nothing. It's better than what we were saddled with for years.
That's true.
And then, I'm a huge hockey fan, so it's been very disappointing on that end.
You said hockey. I know you're a hockey guy. The Blackhawks have been on a decline for the last couple years, Mark.
Yeah.
And we've always been saying, and I know you've probably heard it, that it's probably time to blow up the Kane and Tays line or the dynasty.
Just them being there.
Just them being there. Is it already too late for them?
I've been saying that for the past year now. Look, nobody's going to touch those contracts.
No.
But their contracts are up. These were 10-year, $10 million a year deals. They're going to be up at the end of next year. So that's when I think you look for them to move. Jonathan Taves, one of the greatest captains ever, the youngest captain at the time. Just nothing but class, great. He's been beset with a lot of injuries and illnesses, and his best years are obviously behind him.
For sure.
Patrick Kane is still playing at a spectacular all-star level. You know, he has decided, I don't have to score goals every night.
That's true.
I'll have 3 assists every night.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, he's over 50 assists. He's got 19 goals. He still has the greatest hands in the NHL. He's deceptively quick and fast. He is, and I love seeing him wearing the A now, because that's like Hull and Makita, Taves and Kane.
Yeah.
Right.
And DeBrincat's a good little player, but Seth Jones was a nice acquisition. They brought his brother along for the ride. But Kyle Davidson is the new GM. He was an intern. He was a video coach intern just maybe 9 years ago. So good luck to him. That's the wave. They have young guys in there in the front office. And the word is he was a dissenter when Stan Bowman was in there. Like, Davidson wasn't agreeing with Bowman all the time and being a yes man. He was very critical of some of Stan's decisions, which I think is a positive.
Right.
So let him be his own man and make his deals. But first they got to gut the team. Obviously nothing's happened with Kane and Taves and won't this year. But I would try to move them next year, and you could get something for Kane.
For sure.
I'm not sure. See, people say, let's let him go back home. Well, Buffalo's rebuilding with a lot of young people. They don't want Kane right now. He doesn't fit. Winnipeg, they're a bubble playoff team, but they're selling off. They're not going anywhere. It'd be nice to have the hometown guy back, but I just think it's sad that they both are kind of languishing. Why make them go through a rebuild?
Yeah.
They can pad their stats. Kane's already in the Hall of Fame, but it's kind of depressing having covered those 3 championships. And those years, I mean, it was spectacular.
For sure.
And now to see them just kind of hanging around. They're playing hard. They're giving all they've got, but it's going to be a long, long rebuild. And as we know, the NHL is always the 4th major sport.
Right.
And I just went to who they played the other night? Bruins. I went to the Bruins game, and it was almost sold out. People are still going.
Yeah.
But people, it's not a big talk radio topic.
No, it's not.
It's the NFL and the Bears, and then everybody else is second and third.
Right, and being here in Chicago, the Bulls will always have that opportunity, especially if they're good, to kind of be there. But you're absolutely right.
Yeah, then you have the Cubs. It's Bears, Cubs, and the Sox. They could go on and win the World Series,
and nobody would bat an eye.
They could be in the playoffs, and they're still not as popular as the Cubs.
No, and we have our own podcast too as well. And I literally say that the MLS will have that opportunity to compete with the major teams. Now, it won't reach NFL, it won't reach NBA, but it'll definitely compete with the NHL and the MLB if, obviously, what happened this offseason.
You think so?
I believe so.
See, I think it was a mistake to move out of Bridgeview just because that was a perfect size stadium.
I agree with you on that part.
Geek Stadium, you want a smaller venue. Now, going to Soldier Field, even if you got 30,000 people there, it looks like nothing.
Yeah.
But they wanted to have the Chicago brand being in the city. I get that, because people didn't want to go to Bridgeview. You don't want to drive there.
Right.
So, and the MLS is really interesting to me because worldwide in soccer, it's about the 10th best pro league at best. Seriously.
Yeah?
Premier League, Championship League,
you got
Liga,
La Liga, you got
Bundesliga.
Germany, Spain,
Yes.
Italy, on and on.
It's all so much better over there. And all the superstars there come to the MLS for one last paycheck after they're done over there. Although the MLS is generating younger talent.
Yeah, they got Gianreco when he was in his prime, and now the Chicago Fire getting Shaqiri, still kind of in his prime, but his story is kind of a sad
And they
story.
set up the program where they're cultivating local kids.
Local
signing kids when they're 14 years old to future.
I have a buddy whose brother's with the Chicago Fire right now.
See, I think that's good. And what's incredible to me is the expansion. Just like in London, where there's a team on every corner, the MLS, I think, almost has 2 teams in every major market. And now they're up to, 33 teams?
32 teams.
32 teams, and they're still expanding. What drives me insane, it's because I'm an American, and I understand that you want to appear more European and international and South American and everything else. But it's just the whole FC, City, United thing, and the name of your team is just the name of the city.
Right.
With the, I like nicknames.
Right.
And so there are only a few left. LA Galaxy, and, Chicago Fire.
Right.
You got Portland Timbers. You got Colorado Rapids.
The Sounders.
So you still have some, but the wave now is to just your city, and it's like a postmark of FC United or City or whatever.
And that's how it is basically around the world too as well. I'm telling you, if they follow the FIFA schedule where they don't play in the summer, but I get it, you're competing with the NFL and
Yes.
the NBA here around that time.
So MLS, I think, has a bright future.
They do.
I just don't think in Chicago, even though we have large ethnic communities, and I think the Polish community and the Hispanic community, they've already supported it.
Yep.
Right.
I just don't think it's ever going to reach Bears, Cubs, Bulls status. I really don't.
I think you're right on that aspect. It won't reach there, but it will compete. At least if they're good around that time, it will compete. I promise you.
And look, soccer has become part of the fabric of professional sports in this country.
Mm-hmm.
When I was coming up, no one ever played soccer. No one knew anything about it. There was a sportscaster in New York City at WPIX, the independent station, Jerry Hall, and they would do 3-second promos on the air with him.
Yeah.
And it was him standing in front of the camera, and he'd go, "Soccer? No." That was the promo.
Wow.
And that was like 1972 or something. So it's come a long way, and it's nice to see the international flavor.
Yeah.
I mean, we have two polar opposite baseball teams right now, though. Two teams that are going the opposite direction. The White Sox look like they can compete for a championship, and the Cubs, who knows what they're doing, honestly. But what are your
trying
thoughts?
to do?
Yeah.
They're trying to appease both ends. They want to be semi-competitive and rebuild at the same time. You can't do that.
You can't.
And everybody hates the Ricketts.
You got to pick a lane.
For good reason.
Yeah.
For the history of their family and everything else. Now they're trying to buy Chelsea. They want to jump in to the whole soccer thing. And I'm glad they're getting the blowback because they came in and they bought up Wrigleyville and they pushed every mom and pop store and restaurant out of there. They took over 8 city blocks and built all their own restaurants.
Doesn't
and
look the
everything
same.
else. Then they got hit by the pandemic and it all crashed. And karma's a bitch. And look at Wrigley and Fenway, to me, are still the most charismatic ballparks in Major League Baseball. I mean, there are some great new facilities, obviously. But, people are always going to go to Wrigley. And people are always going to show up, whether they're good or not. And they'll generate more revenue now that we're getting back to normal. But they're not going to be competitive for several years. The Sox, they should win it again. But it was so disappointing last year to get shut down right out of the box in the postseason. And, I always loved Tony La Russa. And I got here in 1982, and he was still like the young, up-and-coming, cool guy. He was the young stud manager. And now he's 100 years old, and I should be standing up for him for AARP because, I'm 70. So I should be, pumping up old people. But I thought that was the weirdest hire. Well, it turns out every player loves him, led by Tim Anderson, who's the guy you want to love.
Right.
Yep.
And it's all gone fine. So I have to give Jerry Reinsdorf credit for that. But they need to take the next step this year. They really do. And again, I remember in 2005, they win the World Series. Ozzie was the greatest character on earth. It was so tremendous covering him. That team, everybody was a character. They were so much fun. And, a couple million downtown for the big rally. But it still wasn't as big as the Cubs. And I have always been leaning toward the South Side. I was always more of a Sox fan. I try not to be a fan of any team when I'm working because they gave media total access, and they were cool, where the Cubs were very restricted. The Bears and Cubs, they don't want you to have access to anything. They want to control their product to the nth degree, which has always been frustrating for media people. And I'm rambling here, but just one last point.
You're fine.
The pandemic, to me, accelerated the inevitable. Well, you'll never be allowed in a locker room again. You'll sit in a little conference room, and you'll get a manager or a coach and one player at the podium. That's it. That's your media access. And for the most part, post-game is now Zoom. It's still Zoom.
Yeah.
Because during the pandemic, that's all we got were Zoom interviews. You couldn't go out there and get a soundbite with a guy. And I think they're just going to stay with that so they control the product even more. And you see some small market baseball teams like Baltimore and Washington, they are still keeping their play-by-play and analysts home and doing games off the monitor and not putting them on the road because it's cheaper. It's pretty scary. It's pretty scary.
Even watching the game on TV.
You guys get an expense account.
Exactly.
Big Lincoln on the road in the presidential suite.
Exactly.
Right.
Styling.
Man.
Meal money.
Nah, man. It's still not the same.
Those days are over.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So Mark, thank you very much.
No,
We
it was
appreciate you coming on to In The Stu. Another great episode of In The Stu here in Illinois Media School. For Eric Avila, Jose Contreras, Mark Giangreco. Until next time, we'll see you then.